era. That'd be a whole nother session, which would be interesting. But y'all did a great job. So good to see all of you. And I certainly understand there might be some connection issues, and you know, if you're unable to turn on video, no worries, I understand. But if you can, it's certainly appreciated to be able to see you all. I'll go ahead and jump right in. Our speaker today is Josh Ammons. He's an App alum. He's vice chair for the Brantley board and will be chair soon. He's an executive vice president at AmWINS and a property broker. And it's just a huge supporter of our program. He's on campus quite a bit. He's traveled with the students to London several times, and appreciate all he does for us. So we were talking earlier summer about potential topics, and his job has obviously changed quite a bit, as many people's has in this era with COVID. And you know, I think a big part of it is he'll share his relationships and meeting people and networking. And so how has he managed that? So Josh, I'm going to mute myself, and I assume you want them just to either chat in the message board or go off mute and raise their hand or get your attention, and you'll.
Yeah, either one. I mean, we've got a small enough group to where, you know, it's manageable. I appreciate everybody having their phone on mute, right, or their audio on mute right now, just so there's no background noise. But you know, take yourself off and chime in or chat. I'll be able to see that too. And for the people that were on earlier, I want this to be interactive and hopefully helpful for you guys to, you know, pick up a couple cool takeaways or get some things answered. You know, I didn't prepare a detailed PowerPoint or anything like that. Dr. Marlette and I talked a little bit about some things that we wanted to touch on. But other than that, you know, I want this to just be a conversation with you guys, and that's how I'm kind of looking at the next hour. So keep that in mind. But you know, Dr. Marlette, he's already introduced me, and a lot of you guys, you know, I've talked with before. But I graduated from App State back in May of 2007. I took one insurance class when I was on campus. I always bring that up. And Dr. Marlette was my teacher, my professor, and in the principal's class. And because of that, we had a guest speaker, probably doing some similar stuff to what I'm trying to do with you guys now, to just come and talk about what we do and our line of work. And I don't want to say in the real world, because you guys are in the real world, but you know what I mean from a professional standpoint. And so at the time, we had our CEO and HR director come on to campus, and I was a junior, and they talked about the wholesale side of the insurance industry, which is where I'm at. And I liked what they had to say. I reached out. We stayed in touch. I interned after my junior year. They asked me to come back and spend a little bit of time over the holidays of my senior year, and I joined full-time in May upon graduation. And I've been with the same firm I always round up, so I'm trying to be accurate with you guys, 14 years. I've served in several different roles. I started out as a team member, joined a large healthcare team, did that for about 5 years, touching different lines of insurance. Then I was asked to move to New York City and take on a corporate role with our president, focused on our national client relationships, did that for almost 2 years. And then I was asked to move back to Charlotte, which is not only where we're corporately based, that's our corporate headquarters. We're an international firm, but we sit in, for people that are familiar with Charlotte, we sit right beside South Park Mall. And I lead our branch in Charlotte, our brokerage office. And as Dr. Marlette mentioned, what I do on a daily basis and what I get paid to broker deals on is tough to place property insurance. So with that, y'all are welcome to ask any questions. And I'll just jump right in to kind of, you know, the title of our session today. And I think our session will probably pivot. We'll touch on a bunch of different items. But insurance in the COVID era, for me, there's two ways to respond to that. And the first one is it's business as usual in terms of what we're actually doing, which I think is interesting for you guys to hear, not only from a tremendously beautiful way to look at the insurance industry. It's incredibly stable, and we have not missed a beat with everything going on. It's been incredibly challenging for a lot of our clients, A lot of the business owners are suffering tremendously, especially in the hospitality world. You think bars, restaurants, hotels, motels, you think travel industry, you think airlines. Those people and business leaders and employees are struggling, and we're doing everything we can as an industry to be there to support them. But I say it's business as usual because, you know, as a broker, I was in and out of the office quite a bit before coronavirus, going to see clients, going to various conventions, going to London, going to, you know, all these places. So I was used to working, you know, from wherever I could get a Wi-Fi connection and make a phone call. And now we're working from home, and, you know, I give a lot of credit to my team. And this is not only across my team, my office, AmWINS, all of our competitors, all of our partner carriers. Everybody's done a really good job simply pivoting to work from home. On the flip side, you know, things are different in terms of what we're seeing and the questions we're being asked from clients, the struggles that a lot of, you know, the business owners that I just mentioned are facing. They're new, and, you know, this hasn't really, you know, I'm sure everybody's seen the news. You've seen. I saw swine flu brought up on the presidential debate the other night. I hadn't thought about that situation in a while, but there's been some pandemics, you know, in American history, but things were different, and the economy was different, and technology is different, and, you know, the world's a lot more populated than it was at that time, and a lot more developed. So even though we've had some viruses that have taken a hold of certain parts of the world, including the United States, you know, this is new. Nobody's seen this. No insurance companies have, you know, truly prepared themselves to be able to rate and underwrite this. And when I say the word underwrite, and this is for anybody that's probably a senior, you're probably comfortable with this term, and honestly, probably people in the principals class. But the term underwrite, when you think about it as a verb, what you're actually doing when you're underwriting is trying to understand the risk or the likelihood that a claim is actually going to occur as a result of the coverage that you're providing. And so when you think about trying to underwrite a pandemic or a virus, and in reality, nobody's trying to underwrite COVID-19. The question is, you know, what happens next? What's COVID-20 look like, or whatever the name of the next one is? And in reality, a lot of business owners are saying, well, I'm not going to pay for that because, you know, this happened. It hasn't happened for 100 years, and it's not going to happen again for another 100. Now, personally, I think that we're going to be dealing with the ramifications of the current situation for quite a while. But yeah, from an insurance perspective, it's been a lot of the same in terms of everybody's day-to-day and work responsibilities staying the same. But it has been very, very different in terms of the questions we're being asked. It's not like a hurricane that we see every single year, and sometimes they make dramatic landfalls, and sometimes they skim Florida, and sometimes they stay out in the Atlantic. We know that. We can model that as an industry. The actuarial teams, you know, people can see that is fairly predictable. You can't predict exactly where a hurricane is going to go, but I can promise you guys today with 100% certainty that there will be a hurricane that it gets named in 2021. We just know that there's going to be a hurricane. We don't know that there's going to be a pandemic. And I think that has caused some unrest. But going back to the comment I made about the stability, AmWINS, I'm proud to say, and AmWINS is not the only company, but you know, most firms in our industry, we've not had to lay anybody off. We've not had to cut comp. There's been a couple really large firms that have considered cutting comp and did cut comp, but they fixed that immediately when they realized that, you know, the economy was rebounding. So it's an incredibly stable industry. And I was on a panel, an executive panel for WSIA. I don't know if anybody was, you know, participating in any of that, but one of my fellow panelists was a gentleman named Gerald Dupree, the CEO of Hallmark Financial, a big property partner of ours. And Gerald, you know, I think he said that he's been in the insurance industry for 40 years, and one of the, you know, the greatest pieces of advice or tidbits of knowledge that he received early on was that if you're in the insurance industry, there's always going to be a need for you in some area, and your job may change or shift, but there's always going to be a need, because insurance as an industry is essentially the backstop of the global economy. And without insurance, companies can't operate. If you're as small as, a bar in Boone, North Carolina, you have to have insurance to protect yourselves from liability if a customer comes in, is overserved, and gets hurt, and then go up to a monster global manufacturing company. You've got to have insurance to protect against you manufacturing a faulty product or your facility burning down. So without insurance, nothing can work. I mean, can you imagine? I can't imagine. What if insurance did not exist and people just had to roll the dice and hope they had enough money in the bank to cover any catastrophe? It's just not. It's not realistic. And think about this. I'm switching over to personal finance, but I know a lot of you guys are probably taking some finance classes as well. And you'll hear this as you start to work full time and you get paychecks, and there will be a lot of commentary, whether it's blogs or friends or parents, or they'll say, look, you need to set aside 6 months of earnings or costs to cover any type of emergency that might come up. And, that 6 months, it could be a year, it could be whatever. But think about that. Think about if insurance didn't exist and business owners just tried to set aside 6 months of their expenses and their payroll, and that's nothing. Like the amount of insurance that's provided relative to the premium. A lot of business owners, think that insurance is way too expensive, but we as an industry put up billions and billions with a B dollars of insurance for a lot less premium, and it allows people to sleep at night and know that if things are going to go sideways, that they're going to have coverage. And I say that again in the face of a primarily uncovered event, which is crazy to think about. COVID essentially is not I think one of the reasons it hasn't had a huge impact, and it has had a tremendous impact, but from a covered property or business income standpoint, virus is typically not a covered peril. And so because that is what caused the loss, most of the claims have not been covered. There have been a few situations. I think Wimbledon was a great example. People saw that I believe it was actually Swiss Re as a company that underwrote that, along with a number of other people. But that was a $100 million loss because they had special event coverage. That wasn't property coverage. That was special event. If something happened to prevent them from being able to host it, then there was a payout. So there are a lot of claims like that have been paid, but most have been uncovered. And I think from a legal standpoint, one of the most interesting things to see, and I get 1 million newsletters a day, and I read 500,000 of them. And there are a lot of battles right now going on in court to try to figure out, is the virus, is COVID-19, did that cause physical property damage? If somebody with coronavirus comes into a bar or restaurant and touches a table, is that table damaged? Was that physical damage? And in reality, between us, and I don't want to get in trouble. I see we're recording, so I should keep that in mind. But the table in 24 hours is completely fine. The table has not changed. That virus is going to go away, whether it's cleaned or it just evaporates in the thin air. But the patron walking in could have shut down the entire establishment for a while. So that's the battles that are raging right now. That's the class action attorneys versus the carriers, and we as brokers and agents, we support the business owners and help them go down the correct process of reporting and filing any claims. but it's not up to us to make that determination. It's up to adjusters. It's up to attorneys. So we kind of stay out of that situation while helping them navigate that kind of scary process. So that's probably, I'll pause there. I probably threw a lot at you guys. That's kind of what we're seeing and feeling right now in terms of the environment. We're going to go back to the office, just so you guys know. For us personally in Charlotte, we were actually renovating our office anyways, so it was going to be closed until about this time. I think that's going to be done in the next 2 weeks. And at that point, we're going to allow, small percentages of people to return to the office. Probably super similar to what you guys are doing on campus right now. It's not a free-for-all, 100% back in the classrooms. And for us, it'll probably be 25 or 50% at a time. With the hope, our personal hope right now is that we're back in an office environment close to normal by the first of the year. And if you ask my personal opinion, I think it's still completely up in the air. I think that, we will. I think the good thing about our industry, our firm, and probably you guys on campus is we're taking it honestly 1 day, 1 week at a time right now, because things could change. There could be an uptick, as weather gets cold and more people get sick, or there could be a vaccine that pops up that is effective. And so we really, really don't know at this point, which is, it makes it tricky. But I think everybody's doing the best they can, and it feels like Groundhog's Day for us, and I'm sure it does for you guys too. So with that, I'll pause. Dr. Marlette, it looked like you may have had a question.
Yes, and if any students have a question, just sort of raise your hand or pause, and please take advantage of the opportunity here. But I was going to follow up, Josh, when you mentioned the issue of many of these claims are not going to be covered because it's not a covered peril, there wasn't direct loss. As a broker, are you involved in that conversation with the policyholder? Because I imagine that it's a pretty emotional moment for them, or is that more claims, lawyers, company folks?
Yep, it's both. It's both, and it's tough. I mean, if I go back to, I can remember the dates at this point, but we went home March 16th, which was a Monday, and we showed up to the office that Monday. I was actually in LA for a convention in like March 2nd. It was actually a WSIA convention with a bunch of execs from the industry. And then I was in LA for another week for work, seeing some clients. Flew back to Charlotte that Monday, the 9th. That Wednesday, the 11th, was when the NBA game that I was watching live was not played, and that was the domino. To me, that was the true domino. Because that was national news, everybody was paying attention, and then from then on, it was things started to happen. So from March 16th on, we got sent home. We took our monitors, and at that point, personally, I thought that we would be back in 2 weeks and everything would be fine. That has not been the case. So from that point, really April was when stuff hit the fan, and the clients realized, the business owners realized that they were going to be shut down for an extended period of time. They started losing revenue, and think about, again, put yourself in the shoes of a hotel or a restaurant, and if you're closed, you can't pay your employees, and you depending on how much money in the bank you have, you might not be able to pay your rent or your mortgage. That's where things started to get really real for a lot of people. And so the first line of defense, and I shouldn't use that terminology, but the first phone call whenever a client is struggling or has a potential claim, they're reaching out to their agent, their retail agent, and saying, hey, what do I do? What do I do? I need to file a claim. I'm closed. I'm not making money. A lot of times the agents will do right by the client. Sometimes the client reports the claim directly to the insurance company. That's on every policy. There's a way for a client, the business owner, to report a claim, phone number, email. But a lot of times they, they're frantic. They're worried. They come to us, our agents, and to us. And, to answer your question, Dr. Marlette, we stay out of the legal interpretation of the policy wording, because that always goes to the carrier and the legal teams. But, I say all that. We have a lot of conversations with our clients. It's up to us to know, the product that we're helping sell or place on their behalf. And, I'm able to have a lot of conversations and say, look, by the letter of the policy, if you want my personal opinion, I don't think that this claim is going to be covered because viruses are excluded. And that, to me, is the cause of this specific claim. And you've got a lot of people that are pushing, well, let's try to go down the path of civil authority. And that civil authority is when a government entity, local, state, federal, shuts you down to where you can't operate. And we see that with hurricanes quite a bit, where civil authority requires an evacuation and they force businesses to close. And the tricky part there, and this is actually a great example because this will kind of come back to coronavirus. Think about a senior living facility at the coast of North Carolina, out in, let's say it's sitting on Wrightsville Beach. I know that there's not any on Wrightsville Beach, but just pretend that there's essentially a senior living facility that's like an apartment complex for older people. And maybe they've got some help, maybe it's an assisted living facility, maybe it's independent, whatever it is, and there's a Cat 5 hurricane bearing down on Wrightsville Beach. And they've got 2 days. And the governor of North Carolina says everybody has to leave Wrightsville Beach. Everybody has to leave the coast of North Carolina. Get out, get out, get out. If you own the senior living facility, you're going to spend some money to get all of your residents out, and you're going to get buses and vans or do whatever you got to do, because not everybody in that scenario can just jump in their car and drive west. So let's say that you spend $100,000 to get all of your residents to safety. If that hurricane hits and damages the facility, that's the trigger. That's the physical property damage trigger, to where then there would be a claim that you could have protection for the building being repaired and made whole, any contents that were damaged, any business income that you would have lost as a result of being shut down. And there's typically sublimits for civil authority, to where there would be some additional money that could cover any type of expenses to protect your residents. However, if that Cat 5 hurricane last minute veers off and doesn't make landfall, doesn't cause any damage, it was just a big scare, technically, in most policies, there's not coverage for that money that you spent evacuating your patients, because there was no action, there was no trigger. And there are very few policies that would have the civil authority decision actually be the trigger. Most of them require a physical damage trigger. So then going back to coronavirus, what is the physical damage trigger? What can you see, that damaged that building? And in reality, there's nothing that was damaged. So there are a few policies, some manuscript stuff that may have had, some civil authority coverage that allowed things to be triggered. But early on, I mean, we were seeing lawsuits. There's a huge one. And it's big. That was the name of the acronym of the class action, essentially. And it was led by an attorney out of New Orleans, and he was representing Thomas Keller. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you guys, but that's the chef and owner of French Laundry and a number of other super, like, Michelin star restaurants, super high end. And they came together and said, look, this is, we need to sue the insurance industry because they're denying these claims. And so, there was conversations around, well, if a virus entered an HVAC system and an air conditioning vent and contaminated the whole restaurant, does that constitute physical damage? And so you can see all of these things. I don't want to say are above my head or any of my colleagues' head, because they're not. We have our personal opinions on it, but our role is not to determine whether or not that has that's the definition of physical damage. And honestly, that's where you see, the court system and the legal side of the insurance industry come into play. And they do a great job. I mean, if it's black and white, then it's easy one way or another. If your building catches on fire and you've got fire insurance, you get paid. And if your building floods and you don't have flood insurance, you don't get paid. Most claims are that easy when it comes to property. Now, the liability side of the business is a lot more gray area, which for me personally, I prefer the black and white. I'm a numbers guy. I like black and white. I like to know, did something happen or did it not happen? The liability, my colleagues on the liability side, they're used to the gray area. And to me, COVID, the attorneys and the clients wanted it to be a gray area conversation. And I think that's where it's at as an industry. There are a lot of battles going on. And it's been interesting. Usually with something like this, one case will be decided that sets precedent for all the other cases to just fall in line. And that hasn't been the case. There's been a lot of decisions that have ruled in favor of, the insurance company saying, yes, this is excluded because it was as a result of a virus, and there's clear exclusions. And then there's been other cases that nothing's been settled in favor of saying that coronavirus has caused physical damage, but there have been a lot of cases that are continuing on because the court or the jury or the judge has said, look, we're open to figuring out what the definition of this will ultimately be. And so, it's crazy. Like I said, there's the council, which is CIAB in our industry, sends out a newsletter every single afternoon, and I read it every single day because it's legislative updates. And it's, for what we do, if you're not really dialed in with what's going on, you're behind the game. People call with questions all the time and say, can you tell me about this or what's going on? And if I'm able to rattle off what happened yesterday or this morning, it makes us a lot more valuable to our partners.
Thank you. I'm going to pause for a second and give the students, if anybody would like to ask a question before I go into the next one. Yeah, Jacob?
I have a question.
Yep.
Hi, Josh. My name is Teo Piper. I'm a junior from Atlanta, and I'm taking the principal's class this semester. But
Nice.
You talked a lot about all this that's going on and probably how much of a headache it is. But I was wondering what your favorite part of what you do is, like what gets you excited to be doing your job?
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that, Teo. And there are a couple things, and I'll address that from probably three different angles. So the first one, I'm super, super competitive. So anytime that I'm competing for a piece of new business to help a client out, deliver the best product pricing coverage to a client, and I'm able to go out and win that deal because I know more about that exposure, or I've got better relationships, or whatever that is, the thrill of the deal gets me fired up. And it's not even about the size of the account. Obviously, I love writing, large accounts just like everybody, but even winning the small ones, that makes me feel good. Those are temporary. Those come and go. If I lock one up one day, it's done and over with the next day. So it's like an athlete, and you interview them after the game, and it's like interviewing LeBron after they won the Western Conference Finals. It's like, yeah, that's awesome, but we haven't won the championship yet. So it's for us. We enjoy it. It gets me excited, but then it's on to the next one. The second thing for me is the people aspect of what we do. I love my group at AmWINS and a lot of my clients, and I'm fortunate enough to have built a book of business that allows me to focus my time and energy on people that I want to work with. Early on, when I was much, much younger, I worked with a lot of people that may not have been true partners. And right now I say that 90% of the people that I work with are partners. So I enjoy that aspect. And then last and probably most important, and this is important these days, is I've gone through so many big claim scenarios at this point, coronavirus, included, but a lot of hurricanes, and there was a monster fire very recently in Columbia, South Carolina. I don't know if anybody's from that area, but there was a huge fire at a historic building that was being redeveloped, and I handled the insurance for that. And getting a frantic phone call on a Saturday morning from a client that's saying, there's a 5-alarm fire going on, and the building that we just placed a month ago, like, we're freaking out, knowing that they're okay and that they're going to be made whole. That's a good feeling too, because that's why we do what we do. Like, insurance, just like for you guys, for your renter's insurance or your car insurance, I say this all the time because I'm a customer and a consumer, in my own personal life as well. I don't like writing checks for insurance. I don't like paying my car insurance if I haven't had an accident. But then I did have an accident and everything was paid, and it's like it's reassuring. And I think when you've got, if you've never had a loss, if you're a business owner or just an individual that has insurance, that buys insurance, that's never had a loss, then it's a nuisance and a headache and something that you don't want to deal with or write a check for. But as soon as it happens and like, you're scared to death because, like, for me, on the personal side, my car was flooded. I was parked at South Park Mall, and my car, I came out to it, and it was a summer thunderstorm. Water had risen above my back seat and just completely flooded out, totaled my car. And I'm just sitting there like, what do I do? And I called the insurance company, like, you're fine. Like, it's a headache for you to deal with in the short term, but we got you covered. Like, we're sending you a check and we'll deal with everything. Like, that's like, okay, I'm not going to complain about writing a check for insurance anymore, because when I needed it, they were there. And what we do on the commercial side is that, but, multiples in terms of size and importance. And I think that makes me feel good knowing that, we are there and we're helping as an industry, not just me personally, but, as an industry, to help people get through some tough times. So I think that's, that might sound cheesy or like a Hallmark greeting card, but that's the reality. Like, when something bad happens and things are fixed and people are okay, like, that makes you feel good for what you're doing.
That was great. Thank you, Josh. Somebody else had a question also. Was it Jacob?
Yeah, I see Jacob.
It's kind of a two-part question, but so how do you guys, like, get a new client, like, write a new person's insurance? And the second part of that question is, how has COVID affected AmWINS doing that?
Yeah, great question. So I'll take a step back, because I'll redefine what I do and where I sit in the distribution flow. So you got your business owner that needs insurance. You've got your retail agent that represents that business owner. And then you've got a wholesaler like us. And then you've got all the insurance companies. So I never deal directly with the business owner. So I'm never going out talking to a restaurant owner saying, hey, can I talk to you about your insurance? My job is to build relationships with the retail agents that go out and do that and bring in all the business owners. So from our perspective, that hasn't really suffered tremendously due to being stuck at home and not being able to travel. Now, I will say that I have not built any new relationships on my own during coronavirus. Outside of the only new relationships that I built have been referrals from other people that I work with that said, hey, you should call Josh. Maybe they're competitors, but they're buddies because they're, a guy and a girl are in the same industry association, or independent agents of North Carolina. Those are competitors, but they do so much good together that they'll talk. And so I get some referrals that way. But I'm not going out to new retail agencies, and I say new to me that I don't currently work with during this time. And we're still, we're super busy because the market is what we call very hard right now. And there are a lot of standard markets that are getting off of placements. So my existing retail base, my existing client base, they need us more than ever now. So I'm getting a lot of business that way. Now, if I think about it from the retailer's perspective, that's a bigger challenge because they are the ones that are actually talking to the business owners. And a lot of the business owners don't want to get together with somebody or go, play golf or go to a ball game or even have a meeting at their office with a retailer that's coming in and saying, hey, let me talk to you about your insurance. So that has been affected. And I think there are a lot of people that are being very creative, and I'm seeing it on the younger side, kind of in that sub 40 group, 40 years and younger. And again, that's a generalization because there's some older people that are doing a really good job of this too. But I think people that are adapting to the current environment and taking advantage of videos and being creative that way, and convincing somebody to jump on a Zoom, and I'm jumping on a million these days. I know everybody's probably tired of them. It's tricky, but convincing somebody to jump on for 30 minutes and have a genuine conversation, or do something fun together, whether it's a virtual happy hour with trivia or, it's all the stuff that you guys are saying. I think that some retail agents are doing a really good job of that, and they're still winning new accounts. And then the last thing that I'll add to it right now, because the market is so brutal, pricing is going up on everything. Deductibles are going up on everything. And it's a really challenging time to be a business owner from an insurance perspective, even if they are 100% operational from a coronavirus standpoint, which most of them aren't. And so if an agent has not done a really good job of preparing that business owner for what's coming, there's been a lot of sticker shock at the end of the day that has caused a lot of agents to get fired. It's up to us. What I always try to do I'm working on a bunch of December and January accounts right now where I'm just calling up my retail partners saying, look, here's what's coming. We need to prepare our client for this, because if not, they're going to fire you, which ultimately gets me fired. We need to make them comfortable. They're not going to like it, but let's step up and be professional and tell them up front and give them honest feedback. And, if I put myself in the business owner's shoes, I'm going to respect somebody being honest with me, months ahead of time. I might not like it, and I still might call up somebody else and say, hey, is Josh right? Can you do something better? I hope that's not the case. I hope I do a good enough job letting them know that we've got them covered. But I would rather that happen than them be surprised, us be scared to tell them, our retail partner be scared to tell them that they're going to be paying 25% more than they were last year, and tell them that the day before, and then they get upset and fire everybody involved. So because of that, there has been some movement on the retail side. And I think the smart ones are the ones that are in there, from a new business perspective, trying to educate people that they might not even handle their insurance yet, but just say, hey, this is probably coming. Let me know if you need help with anything. So great question. Yep, Sadie.
Hi, I was just wondering if you think that there will be a case that sets legal precedent for insurance companies to pay for COVID related stuff. Does that make sense?
Yep. So great question, scary question to answer. So I'm seeing some things take place overseas and in the UK right now, where it appears there may be some coverage that is either forced by the government, or it is determined in a legal environment that there was actually coverage in place. And, like I said, anytime that happens, there could be a domino effect. I think in this scenario, there won't be, because I think it would just lead to a million different court cases. But going back early on, if this was actually covered, if coronavirus, just in general, if that was 100% covered, the insurance industry as a whole would have been bankrupt in 2 months, which is crazy. Like, it's crazy to think about that. It's crazy to think about going back to the stimulus packages. I was glued to the news for the first 6 weeks, and then after 6 weeks, I got tired of it and read the newsletters. But I was watching the press conferences every single day, because the PPP program, the stimulus packages, those were all impacting our clients, our business owners. And without the business owners, we don't have anything to work on. So I want them to be healthy for multiple reasons. I want them to be healthy for, their own well-being, but, healthy from a business perspective to where we're still able to work on them and handle their insurance. And at the time, it was reported that there was roughly $400 million, just under $400 billion. I said million. It was $400 billion a month of lost income, economic impact. And at the time, the insurance industry had about $800 billion of surplus, cash sitting in the bank ready to pay claims. And if you got a Hurricane Katrina or another monster event like that, that might be a $50 to $100 billion loss event. The wildfires that are going on right now in California, that'll probably be about a $10 or $12 billion event. So you think about those, and you've got $800 billion that's set aside to pay. You don't want to pay $100 billion of that $800 billion. Like, that's a huge chunk that comes out, and it leaves you reeling as an industry. If you had to pay $400 billion a month, the entire industry is bankrupt in 2 months, and there's no more insurance ever. Like, it couldn't happen. And one of the reasons is because it wasn't covered, it wasn't priced for. At least that's the carrier's perspective. So to answer your question, Sadie, I do think that there is a possibility that, some court somewhere makes a determination that coronavirus was a covered peril. It triggered physical damage. And I don't want to say that will happen, just for somebody to get a lot of attention, but that will be the result. I mean, if there is a court in the United States that determines that, yes, coronavirus it triggered physical damage, it will be all over the news. And, the judge, the attorneys that won the case, it will be a big, big story, and it will be interesting. I don't know what would happen at that point. I don't think that it would just be accepted. I think it would be challenged. It would go to court again. But it's interesting. Like, that's what we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse on. And in reality, I hope that we get through this as an economy. I'm confident we will. I think everything will be different moving forward. But I think we'll get through it, and we need the insurance industry around for people to operate, because there's so many other perils. That was another comment that came up around that similar question, Sadie, is if the insurance industry covers the lost business income, we'll be bankrupt in 2 months. And then how are we going to pay for the hurricanes that are happening? How would we have paid for Laura and Sally that have already, made billions of dollars of losses this year? So it will be interesting, and it's tough. If I'm a business owner, I've been involved in a lot of conversations with some hotel associations, some restaurant associations, and a lot of them that are struggling say, yeah, we want this to be covered. And then I've seen some really, mature is not the right word, but some really thoughtful responses from other business owners in the same boat that are saying, guys, look, if this actually is covered, then we're all going to go out of business because we're not going to be able to have insurance, and it's going to be crazy. So I've seen it from so many different angles. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to ultimately make that decision. But it's a tricky one. It's a great question.
So we probably have time for one more question. I know we have a 12 o'clock session starting that some of y'all have to log off and join, but if we have one more, I think we could squeeze that in. And if not, I have one. So if you guys,
Okay.
okay. So Josh, I don't know if anybody attending currently has the family responsibilities you do, but could you share some of the, not just COVID related, but also like work family balance? I mean, you can talk about dating in the workplace if you want, since your spouse works for AmWINS as well, and just kind of what they should expect in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, perfect. And before that, is Greg drinking a beer right now? I saw that red Solo cup. Okay. I'm just giving you a hard time, Greg. Yeah, great questions, and I'm happy to address any of that. I'll start with the the dating in the workplace thing, because my wife is a casualty broker for AmWINS, and we met actually working on a deal together. She was in our Los Angeles office and did basically the exact opposite of what I did, and we had a client that needed a team in LA to handle the construction wrap piece. And that brought us together, and she did a really good job for the client. And I said, thanks. We caught up in person, and the rest is history. The only thing I'll say, we were older. We were in our, early 30s at the time. And, I've got a lot of young people in my office, and I was in that, that 23, 24 single life at one point about a decade ago. And I've got some young people that are dating in the workplace right now. And I would just say, look, early on, you don't know if, like for me and Shannon, when we hit it off a little bit later in life, like we knew that it was something extremely serious. And I think my only advice would be, don't date somebody in the workplace unless you're very confident that it's going to be a long-term relationship. And I know when you're in it, you think every relationship is going to be long-term or the one, but that's not always the case. And so you don't want something to go sideways and, not be able to continue to be professional. And I'll leave it at that. Some companies, frown upon it or don't allow it. Our company is not like that, where, we want people to be professional. And if you hit it off with somebody in the same industry because you do the same thing, you talk about the same things all the time, you have similar interests, we get it. We just don't want there to be an ugly breakup and, somebody have to leave the company or somebody feel uncomfortable every day. So just be mature, be professional. And then when it comes to family, like, for me, for people that don't know, I have a 4-month-old son now. He'll be 4 months tomorrow. So he came into the picture in June, and before that, no kids. Shannon and I are married, dog. I worked, 100 hours a week, and I could be selfish. I could do what I wanted to. If I wanted to watch a basketball game and sit on my laptop for 3 hours, like nobody, I didn't have anybody I reported to at home. And, now we both report to this little human that, if he's hungry or needs to be changed, and somebody has to do it, he can't do it himself. And that's been, we're fortunate. We've got some help in the afternoons, but that's been crazy. I would be, if we weren't in coronavirus mode and work from home situation, I'd be back in the office right now, working full time, 8 to 5, 6, 7, coming home, working some more. So it's been a blessing to be able to see and be around them a little bit more. I was helping feed them, 5 minutes before I jumped on the video. But the reality is I'm also jumping on my laptop at 6:30 in the morning and working at, 11 o'clock at night, because it's here. Everything is here. And, there was, as brokers, we're working, 24/7 and always available and answering calls, in the evenings and early in the mornings and text all the time. But there was still some degree of what felt like separation when you get in your car, you get dressed, you get in your car, you drive to work, you do your day, whatever you've got going on, you jump in the car, you come home. For me, I used to work when I would get home as well, but there was still somewhat of a degree of separation. And right now there's not. And, for me, I've been in the game long enough to where I was able to adjust to this easily, but I've got some young people that, you know, they've done a hell of a job, but they've also admitted to me that it was tough for them to be, you know, motivated and to be able to stick to a routine when you're stuck at home. You know, you're in front of your TV, you're working, you might live in a 1-bedroom apartment, you're working from your couch and the TV's on, and, you know, your laundry machine's there. And like, it's difficult. But I think everybody's done a really good job. And, you know, routine is the biggest thing. Like for me personally, you got to set a routine and you got to stick to it. And that's what, and like I said earlier, it feels like Groundhog's Day because I do the same thing every day. And I'm wearing basketball shorts. I put a collar shirt on, but I'm wearing basketball shorts under this. So it's a weird, and I'm having phone calls about, you know, 7-figure accounts. It's just a really weird environment right now. And to be honest, I didn't have a great work-life balance before. And there's no balance now. It's just one big blend. It's work and life, and everything is coming at me and everybody else 100 miles an hour. Like, you know, our little one is a handful and a big responsibility, but the people with elementary school age children that are doing virtual learning while they're trying to do deals and answer phone calls. My phone has rang about 6 times since we've been on here. And if I look at my phone, I bet I have 62 emails in an hour. So it's crazy, and I can handle that. But I don't know if I can handle that if I had 2 little ones that were crawling on me, that were, you know, 6 and 8 years old, that needed me to log them in for Zoom. Like, I've got so much sympathy for the moms and dads that work for me, with me, you know, against me as competitors. Like, I think that's the biggest challenge right now, is the people with school age children. And until that time comes, you know, for them to get back into a true routine, like, think about y'all's parents. Like, if rewind maybe 3 or 4 years when you're still in high school and you're stuck at home, like, y'all are going to be adults. You're going to be able to get your schoolwork done. I'm not saying that would be like, you know, the best ever, but you're going to be able to take care of yourselves. And it's for that group that has the 4 to 10-year-olds that I feel for. And, you know, our company feels for them, and we're trying to be as thoughtful and patient as possible. And it's crazy. For me, you know, I got no complaints because, you know, my little man can't crawl yet. So, you know, he's stuck wherever we put him, he's staying. He might get loud at times. But yeah, it's crazy. And it's, you know, and we're super fortunate. Like, and we, not just me and Shannon, but we as an industry are super fortunate. I tell my group this all the time: stay humble, because we are still collecting paychecks. Nothing has changed for us. And there are so many of our friends and family members and clients and, you know, insureds that are going through the toughest time that they've ever had in their entire life. And it's just like, there's such a dichotomy right now between, you know, what people are dealing with and experiencing. And it's just, it's sad and it's crazy. And, you know, we're trying to do everything we can to help.
Well, that was great, Josh. I really appreciate your time today, the professional advice, personal advice, really valuable. And, you know, you always do a great job, but once again, that was just fantastic.
No, and I appreciate you guys having me. This is always fun. I know that, you know, I dominated the conversation, and as opposed to you guys chiming in a ton, but I enjoy spending time with you guys because, you know, I had some great people early in my career that shared some similar advice, and, you know, it's helped me out a ton. When I heard it, and I'm thinking about, you know, being in y'all's shoes right now, when I heard it, I didn't necessarily appreciate everything the way that I do now, but looking back, I'm like, you know what, that was good advice, and a lot of it did stick without me even realizing it. So hopefully, you know, 1 or 2 things that I mentioned may help you guys out. And Dr. Marlette's got my contact information. Greg has it. Y'all are welcome to reach out anytime.
Sounds good. Thank you, Josh. Good luck, everybody, with your interviews, and have a great week.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.